Okay, picture this. A super wealthy kingdom, way out at the edge of the known world. We're talking glittering with gold and silver, a real hub for trade and power. But then, for thousands of years, it was just gone, almost completely lost to history. Well, today, we're pulling back the curtain on Tartessos.
So, who were the Tartessians, really? Well, this is the story of a civilization that was so rich, so influential, that it kind of blurred the lines between actual history and pure myth. For centuries, people thought it was just a legend, you know? But now, modern archaeology is finally starting to uncover the real story, and it's one of Europe's biggest historical mysteries.
All right, so to really get a grip on Tartessos, we've got to go way back to the ancient texts, the legendary stories that got people so curious they spent centuries looking for it. The whole story really kicks off with the name you might have heard before, Tarshish.
So let's look at the timeline here. Tartessos pops up around the 9th century BCE, right there in what's now southern Spain. And we're not talking about some tiny village, okay? This was a major power. At its peak, it was trading like crazy with the Phoenicians and the Greeks. But then, look at this. Around the 6th century BCE, something goes wrong. The coastal cities are in crisis, and the whole culture starts moving inland. They build these massive new buildings, and then, poof, they basically fade from history.
And that name, Tarshish, is so important. This kingdom wasn't just a local big shot. Nope. It was famous all across the ancient world. To them, it was Tarshish, this land of just legendary wealth. Think about it. For sailors from Phoenicia or Greece, getting to Tarshish was like reaching the end of the world. It was this far-off, mysterious place that held unbelievable riches. And look, this wasn't just rumors of treasure. The ancient sources, like the ones you're seeing here, got super specific. They're talking silver, iron, tin, lead. I mean, these are the exact metals that powered the Bronze and Iron Ages. This wasn't a fairy tale, folks. This was a very real economic powerhouse that made Tartessos an absolute cornerstone of the ancient Mediterranean world.
Okay, so they were rich, but what does that actually mean? How did all that wealth shape their society? For the longest time, all we had were these old texts. But now, archaeologists are digging up some absolutely stunning physical proof of just how sophisticated the Tartessians really were.
This quote from the archaeologists at a big site called Casas del Turuñuelo is just wow. It mentions complex architecture, prestige goods, okay, that makes sense, but then it says intentional destruction. They're talking about elaborate rituals that involved purposefully destroying their own sacred buildings. I mean, why on earth would they do that?
Because these guys were master builders, no question about it. We are not talking about simple mud huts here. I mean, look at this. They were putting up huge two-story buildings using really advanced techniques. To pull off grand designs like these massive staircases, well, that takes more than just a few skilled workers. It takes a highly organized society. You need leaders who can plan and manage huge workforces. Tartessos wasn't just rich in metal. It was rich in people and organization.
And that brings us to this number, 52. This is just mind-blowing. It's the number of horses they sacrificed in a single, massive ritual before they abandoned one of their big buildings. The remains of 52 horses, along with other animals, were all carefully laid out in a courtyard. This wasn't just a simple offering. The technical term is a hecatomb, basically a giant public ceremony. And that tells you so much about their beliefs and about the sheer power their rulers must have had.
And, when you have that much wealth, it's going to attract some serious international attention. Archaeologists are finding things like glass bowls all the way from the eastern Mediterranean. They even found a sculpture made of marble from the exact same quarries the Greeks used for the Parthenon. That right there proves Tartessos was a major international hub. They were shipping out their metals and bringing in the absolute best luxury goods the ancient world had to offer.
But that leads to the biggest question of all, right? If this kingdom was so rich, so powerful, so advanced, then why did it just disappear from the history books by the 6th century BCE? This is the core mystery of Tartessos. Did they just vanish into thin air?
So the popular story, the one that makes for a great movie, is that Tartessos just mysteriously vanished, fueling all those legends of lost cities. But the real evidence from archaeology and history points to something way more complex, and honestly a lot more interesting. They didn't just disappear, they changed.
Yeah, instead of one single dramatic event, it was more like a perfect storm. There were a bunch of things happening all at once. For one, the rising power of Carthage was a huge problem for them, leading to wars. Their trade routes got all messed up, and on top of all that, there's even evidence of things like massive floods. It was just one challenge after another piling up.
But here's the really crucial part. The people didn't go anywhere. Their culture just evolved. They became a new group that historians call the Tartessos, and they kept a lot of the old Tartessian traditions alive, right in the same area. Eventually, yeah, they were absorbed by Carthage and later on by Rome, but their cultural DNA, you could say, was pure Tartessian.
So even though the independent kingdom of Tartessos literally faded off the map, its influence didn't. And more importantly, the memory of its incredible wealth, that stuck around for centuries. And that's how it went from being a real place in history to a powerful legend.
And that's really why this whole story still matters so much today. It's just captivating. It's the real place behind the biblical legend of Tarshish. Some people have even tried to link it to the legend of Atlantis. It just fuels our whole fascination with lost civilizations. And the best part? Every time archaeologists dig, they bring another little piece of this amazing story back to life.
So the big takeaway here? It's seeing how a real, actual historical civilization can become the bedrock for these powerful myths that last for literally thousands of years. Tartessos was a real place with real people, real power, and some very real wealth. But its memory grew into something so much bigger. It became this powerful symbol of a lost golden age.
And that leaves us with one last kind of tantalizing thought, doesn't it? The story of Tartessos was buried for centuries. People just wrote it off as a myth. Rediscovering it makes you wonder, what else is out there? How many other forgotten stories, how many other lost kingdoms are just waiting right beneath our feet to be found?